Given the fact we got a new president who feels he has a mandate for change, to rearrange trade agreements, to rearrange geopolitical sort of alignments, to rearrange sort of our industrial policy here at home, or maybe continue it but change it, put his own spin on it. Like, with all that, plus QT in the background and sort of an unknown response to jacked up interest rates over the last couple of years, and you throw in the whole tit for tat with China, Ukraine still going on. Like, am I crazy by thinking I'm looking at vol and they're selling it? Sort of a weird situation today because VIX futures were under cash yesterday, so it's kind of like reversing today. But at 17, 18, am I crazy for thinking, Tom, are you actually getting paid the right amount to sell vol in this environment, in an environment where you can get an executive order tomorrow that can completely change the complexity, the tone of the markets, and the risk? Like, do you trade this environment a little bit differently? Are you getting paid adequately for the narrative, the headline risk that's in the market right now? And this is not my topic for the day, but I'm curious how you think about it.
I think you got to be careful because when you're saying something which is effectively for whatever reason, should I not trust the markets? Mm-hmm. Like, this is not the same thing, Victor, as saying I don't really trust the weather report for today. Okay. This is not like saying I don't trust the traffic report on the Dan Ryan or some highway. This is essentially saying you're not trusting a multi tens of $1 trillion marketplace to assess the correct volatility. And I don't think you can say something like, you know what? The line at 2 doesn't make any sense. I feel like it should be 5. You can say that, mm-hmm. But the reality is if you trade it, you're going to trade it at 2. If you're going to trade right now, the marketplace is telling you what implied volatility is and what it should be. And you have to accept that. You can't sit around and you just can't argue it.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I sort of knew you were going to go with the efficient market point of view. But I guess my point is the market itself can't fully discount an idiosyncratic event. And nor can we really, with accuracy, can the crowd predict those types of idiosyncratic events.
That's
Who's
right.
next with the trade negotiation? What's the number going to be?
That's right.
Whether or not they'll have an 11th hour, okay, we're going to go for 30 days and pull it. There is no way to appropriately discount that, call it a black swan or a gray swan at this point.
No.
So I agree with you that I trust the number when I look at vol. What I'm asking you is, given that idiosyncratic risk that is clearly, it's more front of mind, more possible in this administration, do you change the way you play the game at all?
No, you can't. And the reason that you can't is because the market does an amazing job just because of the sheer size. The market does an incredible job of assessing all that risk and putting it into a number. Like the way you get killed in markets and trading is to think you see something that's not necessarily there. So but to answer your question is all of, let's call it Trump risk, it's already priced in. Like everything, his ability to stay with something, his concentration, his smarts, his negotiating skill, whatever you want to, whatever turns you on or doesn't turn you on, all of that is priced into the markets.
I mean, Victor, I think the way that I would be approaching this if I was a short-term trader is by looking for a little bit more duration. I was looking through Reddit the other day on Wall Street Bets when the tariff announcements came out, and Trump's quote that, he doesn't really care about the stock market. People might have to deal with a little bit of pain. That's not verbatim. Some people were commenting like, well, my zero DTEs care. And I think that's really the risk you're dealing with, right? You may have a great setup that works within your system, but if one of these tweets comes out late in the afternoon, as Trump typically starts tweeting around 1 Eastern, then your zero DTEs could be in a world of hurt. But if you have a longer term time horizon, you can ride out some of the bumps in the news flow. I mean, that's where the 45 and 21 day out may actually serve people well.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think it's hard to know the next tariff negotiation lasts 24, 72 hours, or whether it goes 30 or 60 or 120 days. That's the tough part. But I would agree with you. The more duration you have, the more options you have. Let me ask you guys this question. Since you guys brought it up, I wasn't going to go here, but you did bring it up. I don't want to go political because clearly this was a political setup. So I'm not going to let you 2-on-1 me and get the bandwagon effect in the mind of the viewer. Shout out to all the chat out there. We are Sparta. I am curious, though, apart from the outcomes and what you feel politically. You like that, Dom? Matthew McConaughey in Wolf of Wall Street. Here's my question, Tom and Chris. We went through the negotiation style of a U.S. president in 2016 to 2020, and we're now seeing that negotiation style play itself out again. You might not like what we're negotiating for, how we're negotiating, but you are seeing a style of negotiation play itself out in front of everyone. I'm curious, Tom. You've been an entrepreneur and a market maker and a market participant since you came in the game. This is literally the only I don't want to say the only thing. This is the thing your whole career is centered around, which is negotiation. Whether it's price negotiation,
Sure.
negotiating contracts, salaries,
Sure.
whatever it is. I'm curious, man. You can either grade Trump on his negotiation style, but I think that's going to go left. What I'm more curious about are the lessons you've learned over your career. How long have you been doing this, Tom? 10, 12 years, something like this?
Something like 44 years. Thank you.
A little bit longer than that.
I mean, I'm not.
What's critical to a negotiator and a negotiation style to be successful? Your point.
Trump, in my opinion, is one of the worst negotiators I've ever seen. Claudia Scheinbaum taught him a lesson yesterday, which was embarrassing. And even Justin Trudeau taught him a lesson. Trump is a bully. He's not a negotiator. Negotiators are really smart. And that's what he lacks. And he also, his negotiating style is just to try to hit you in the face. It doesn't work at the level that he's at. I think he's a horrible negotiator. I think it's probably one of his worst traits. Trump's best trait is that he actually understands. He understands people. That's his best trait. His worst trait.
And incentives.
Okay, I'll give you that. And incentives. He understands people. Like he knows, he has an innate ability to understand what people want to hear and what they like and what they dislike. And he has a really good read. It's like he has like some form of street cred when it comes to reading people. That I give him credit for. His negotiation skills, he gets a D-. He's horrible. The worst, one of the worst I've ever seen.
Let me go away from the T word for just a second and just ask you, what in your mind makes a good negotiator, or what attributes have served you well through a lifetime of negotiation?
In order to negotiate, in order to be a strong negotiator, you have to have a certain level of integrity, and you also have to make the other party believe or think that you are real, or believe that you are real, because that's your leverage in negotiation. If the other party thinks you're just in it for a psychological win, or to put a check mark on the board, you have no chance. Negotiation is something that is really about compromise, and really good negotiators compromise. They make quick decisions, they compromise, and they respect the integrity of the deal.
Why do you think she taught him a lesson in negotiation the other day?
Because she recognized right up front that all he wanted was the win. So she gave him nothing but the win. That's all. She gave him nothing but the win, that he could. She gave him the public win. She gave that to him. She handed it to him on a platter, but she gave up nothing. So he got his win, and she had to give up nothing. It's the simplest thing, and it's the simplest rule of the book.
And you think so? What do you think, from a trading point of view? This kicks the can 30 days down the road.
Yeah, sure. Kicks the can 30 days down the road.
I think in a way, market participants in the last 72 hours, we got to look at the market's hand, right? We got to look at whether or not bonds were going to be interesting in an environment where vol spikes. We got to look at how people were going to think about currencies, which currencies they were going to weaken and to which extent. I think we got to look at how people were going to think about metals in that environment, also how people thought about Bitcoin and that certain type of. So I think we got a little bit of a tariff volatility playbook in the last 72 or so hours.
And Chris can chime in on this. I think the last 48 hours or so, you took half to 3/4 of the future risk of tariffs off the table, because the market yesterday acted really strong. In spite of everything that happened, the market acted very strong. And I walked away from yesterday, and I said this to Chris last night on the last call. I said, my takeaway from this is that the bulls seem to have the upper hand here. And when I look at, obviously the rally this morning, but when I think about the next round of tariffs, like you just mentioned, 30 days from now, all that's going through my head is the move will be a fraction of what it was on Sunday night, a fraction of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's boy who cried wolf, right? We're getting desensitized. I
said the same thing this morning. I said the same thing to Vanetta and Julia this morning. This is the story of boy cried wolf.
Victor, if only to take apart some of what Trudeau said to think about the framing here, if only to vindicate Tom's point of view. Trudeau, in his comments, had this as a two-parter. Part one was, Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. According to the Canadian government, prior to yesterday's announcement, 8,500 Canadian Mounties were on the border. This is what's new. In addition, Canada's making new commitments. So we get a fentanyl czar, we get 24/7 eyes on the border, and listing cartels as terrorists. But this is what Tom is trying to say. Trump has manufactured a problem. The foreign leaders see this is just something that they can give him an easy win on. They give him the easy win. Trudeau's like, okay, we're going to do the things that we said we're going to do. And now we kick the can down the road. So look, Ilya had a great point. The USMCA expires next year. This is probably all posturing to get part of a good trade deal. You mentioned you have to be able to, show your cards and prove that you're not bluffing. Trump's not bluffing on tariffs. He's spent the last year and a half talking about how the greatest thing since William McKinley. Okay, so I don't think anyone is not taking him seriously. And the fact that he's willing to go out there right away with our two biggest trading partners says enough. But, next time, unless there is a prolonged standoff, why would we do anything other than buy the dip? That's what we're being conditioned to doing right now. And that's going to hurt at some point in time, but probably not the next time, at least initially.
Yeah, I mean, over a long enough time frame, you always buy the dip. I guess I sort of see this the exact opposite of you guys. I see this as everybody got to look at other players' cards. So Trudeau sort of showed the retaliatory tariffs that he would put on the table and what type of pain he would inflict, sort of taking a page out of the Chinese playbook, which is to inflict pain on his sort of the base states, the MAGA base states. I think we saw market participants' cards. And I think all that rhetoric that you're saying right now, that, all Trump really got was a deal that Trudeau was already going to implement and already announced in December, all that's going to sting a little bit, which means in 30 days, I think they ask for more. And if they're not willing to give up more in a way that balances out his public rep, then I think it's more painful. I would go the opposite route. That I wouldn't take this little tiff and say, because this, then that. And we continue to see these viable 24 to 48 hour dip type situations. I sort of see it a little bit differently.
It's going to be the lesson that's going to be learned, right? We're going to get we go to February 28th. That's a Friday here. Okay, the tariffs go into effect on March 1st. The market's going to lever down a little bit. If the tariffs go into effect, you get a week open that Sunday. And then we're going to wait to see what happens, what phone calls take place Monday morning, right? And if we get to Monday afternoon and we still don't have any progress on getting the tariffs off the board, that's when I think you see the market spill. But there's going to be an initial pause where we go, okay, hold on a second. Didn't we just watch this movie before? Should we panic just yet? Let's wait to see where the dust settles.
Victor, why do you even care?
Victor, I mean, I think that goes back to your earlier point about the VIX.
Why do you care? Who cares about tariffs? It's over.
You've talked about this as kind of being like the gray zone where you're just as likely to go up to 20 as you are to drop back down to 15. So is volatility underpriced, knowing that we have these things lurking around the corner that could be the wolf or could just be, another boy screaming in a field?
Guys, the market's already told you.
Every time, though. So, that's just my disposition.
Between yesterday and today, we're basically unchanged.
Yeah.
The market's already told you.
I'm with you.
It's already made its call.
If I was a longer term sort of buy and hold trader, I would do that too. But I think as somebody tries to trade both sides of a trend and tries to time, I don't know, to my own detriment, I suppose, I would see this as, I 100% agree, the vol, but we don't get the same vol reaction next time around in currencies in particular. But I think if you take this as this is the way these negotiations are going to go every time this pops up, I think you're going to get,
I agree. And like the EU tomorrow is a completely different set of circumstances. They're not Canada or Mexico, right? So they're not going to just get pushed around the way that we pushed around these other countries. They're much less reliant on us.
Let me ask one more before I get out of here then. Chris, on the same question to you. Any tips or points of view on negotiation that have served you well over the years?
Instead of getting the intro like, Chris, you've been an entrepreneur for 40 years. It's like, Chris, you've been a worker for 12. You've been a worker for 15 years. What's it like being in a negotiation? Listen, I've negotiated various things inside and outside of the workplace. You have to know that people are coming from a place of earnestness, right? And you say showing your cards. I mean, the U.S., we know what we can do. Canada, they can threaten us, turn off the energy, but they also don't have the pipelines to get all that oil out of Alberta into Quebec. They need us, right? So realistically, what are we going to do here? I think the bigger problem is that the trade deal that Trump is ripping up here is the trade deal he negotiated. So if you come to an agreement with him, why would other countries in good faith think that we're going to stick to it moving forward? That's my big problem. You have to know that if someone comes to an agreement with you, they're good for their word. And it feels like maybe we don't have that right now. So that's my only problem. But getting the border secure and stopping illegal drugs coming to the country, that's good. I don't want illegal drugs in my country.
20%.
Only the ones that are approved by pharmaceuticals and sold on TV.
That's what I'll say. That's what I'll say to the kids out there. That's what I'll leave you with. I was having a conversation with some people you connected me with, some billionaires in Chicago. I will leave their names out, but the billionaires somehow relevant to their knowledge in game theory negotiation. They said everything is 20% cheaper than the price. You can buy everything at 20% cheaper than the price. So if there's one thing I'm leaving here, dropping a gem on some 18-year-old kid, everything is 20% cheaper than the price. Thomas, what say you about that? You think that's about true?
That is
as a rule of thumb?
That is the most. My grandmother might have said that, but that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in real time.
What do you mean it's ridiculous?
I'm going to tell you why it's ridiculous.
I'm going to go to my grocer and tell them that
because
too expensive.
The only things that are 20% cheaper are the things that should be 20% cheaper. If you want to buy something,
yeah, of course.
If you want to buy something that's good, it costs you. You only can buy crap cheap. You want something good, you got to pay up to get it.
Spoken like a multi-millionaire, if not billionaire. What are you?
You're
saying?
Out of your mind,
Listen,
man.
All of us,
you know
out
what?
Here
you know what
need
drives
to
me crazy?
For
What
every
drives
nickel?
Every nickel. What drives me crazy is people who think that you can buy good stuff
too,
cheap.
Right, Thomas?
What
What's that?
Get it on Temu.
People who think you can buy good stuff cheap drive me crazy because good stuff is expensive. Cheap stuff
Bro,
is
you
cheap.
don't even believe what you're saying. Every vendor who's done business with you, they
Oh
don't
my
just
God.
give you a number and you turn around and go filled. Yet you work with some of the best vendors, some of the best production, some of the best artists. There is zero people who do business with you who give you a number and you go filled.
We're not talking about vendors, okay? You don't walk into
anything.
You don't walk
Anything.
into McDonald's and say, "You know what? I'll buy that coffee,
Yes,
but
I
I
do.
want it 20% cheaper." All right, that doesn't
Yes,
not how
I
it
do.
works.
No, you don't. You don't walk into McDonald's, Victor. This has been a sticking point in our friendship for years.
All I'm telling you, Vic,
Bro.
is expensive things are expensive. Good things are expensive. Cheap things are cheap.
I think
As a negotiator, you have to understand that. If you walk into a negotiation, just think, "Hey, I'm Joe Blow. I can get this for 20% off." You know what you are? You're an insurance adjuster.
no, man. I think you're crazy. I think the best thing. I think most people are afraid to ask. And if you go around in life afraid to ask for the price you want, you're going to go around paying other people's price. And whether it's 20% or 5% or 3% or 1%, or whether you're getting a penny off of the offer or the bid, the point is, if you go around in life paying other people's price, you're the sucker. And if you should go around in life trying to get your price. And if it's not 20% in your world because you're in the high rollers world and people would scoff and laugh and be offended, if you took 20% out of their ask, then maybe it's 5. But
you better
you're
get
the
some
sucker
sleep
if
tonight.
You're playing the list on everything.
You better get some sleep tonight because you better be ready on Thursday. Okay, we got to go.
I mean, who am I talking to? All right,
We got to go.
Take off tomorrow.
20%
Get a lot of
discount.
rest.
only a business owner wants to put out a message to everyone else and tell them not to negotiate. Meanwhile, he's negotiating everybody lower. It's insane. This guy's trying to tell people not to negotiate.
You are so whacked. You are crazy.
See you.